Miracle Rogue, very strong, very fun. I'm Uncorrupt, and I'm going to be taking a deep dive look at this deck. The list that I have here is actually the most popular list out on the ladder. If you are playing against this deck, this is likely what your opponent is going to be playing. And before we go any farther, I want to talk about a couple of the basics that go along with this deck. Most importantly, we need to know how this deck plans on winning games, and it has two primary ways to be able to win. Number one way to be able to win, in no particular order, is Sandstone Graveyard and Edwin, just being able to get those really big minions. A lot of decks can't handle these big minions and they just die to them. The other way that you can win games with this deck is actually to just go very, very wide with small minions. There's games where you don't even need the Sandstone Graveyard or the Edwin that you can be able to win just by overwhelming your opponent with the smaller minions. So Wildpaw Gnolls, Scribbling Stenographers, and even like Ghoulish Alchemist, the 2-mana Astalor Bloodsworn, Maestra of the Masquerade. Being able to get enough of these cards on the board and going wide, you can just overwhelm your opponent. So it's important not to tunnel vision any one way to win with this deck. There's a couple of different ways that you can do it. We just want to take what our deck gives us. And so keeping that in mind, one of the most important things that we can do with the deck is draw cards. And one of the ways that we're going to be doing that specifically is with the potion belt here. So I want to talk about the different potions that are going to be coming off of the potion belt. What we've learned is that the best card to be able to take off the potion belt is the draw 2. If you can get draw 2 plus draw 2, that's draw 4 where I come from, and it's just really strong to be able to play that sprint so cheap and get those cards in your hand. So what makes it so good is, as a general rule in Hearthstone, drawing cards that we put in our deck on purpose is going to be better than random cards that could be generated from, say, the potion that summons a random 3-drop or the potion that gives us a card from another class that costs 3 less. Our deck is built on synergy. All the cards in our deck synergize with cards that are going to be in our hand. And while you can high roll with some of these randomly created things, it stands out in your mind, oh, I won a game because I high rolled a hero card off of the potion that gives me a card from another class. That's not going to happen every time. And if you go into the game with that game plan every single time, you're going to lose games that you could otherwise win. So I'd highly encourage you, take the concoction that's going to be drawing cards from your own deck. That's going to be the best. Beyond that, everything is situational. And even the draw 2 is situational to a certain extent based on what else is going on in the game. So I encourage you to keep an open mind, stay engaged, stay focused in what's going on in the game so that you can make wise decisions about what you're going to need. Beyond card draw, a lot of times taking the card from another class that costs 3 less is good. If you're going to be planning on a Sandstone Graveyard minion, you can possibly get a playable card. It's going to be another card. It makes Sandstone Graveyard bigger. And then sometimes if your game plan is to develop that wide board that I talked about, the 3-mana minion might not necessarily be a bad option, especially if you can hit those twice along with a Ghoulish Alchemist. You can get a wide board very, very quickly for not much mana by going along those lines. Standard mulligan for this deck, we're always going to want to keep Blackwater Cutlass. We are always going to keep the Potion Belt. We're always going to keep Sandstone Graveyard. There's a little bit of debate in the community about certain situations, but I'm going to go ahead and say you always keep Wildpaw Gnoll. That's going to give you your best chance of being able to win the game. There's also some conditional keeps here, but I'm going to talk about those as they come up when we're playing the game. At the point that this guide is coming out, I'm going to assume that you've seen other content creators already playing this deck. And from what I've seen, it feels like they only play against other Miracle Rogues in the mirror matchup and Quest Demon Hunter. So in order to find some other matchups that are very popular on the ladder, but that you can't really find at the top end of the ladder, I'm actually going to take this deck out into casual, see if we can find some other popular matchups in other places on the ladder. Make sure you hit me up in the comments. I want to know what you think about this idea and how you feel about me playing in casual mode. I do think there's a lot of skilled players there. I see quite a few people with the Legend card back, and based on the plays that they make, I know they're good. I just don't actually have a rank to be able to prove it, and I'm not sure how important that is to you. Definitely hit me in the comments. Let me know what you think. None of these cards are in our preferred mulligan. Again, we would want Cutlass, Potion Belt, Sandstone Graveyard, and Gnoll. So we're going to toss all those back. I see that we actually have Concoctor that's going to be in our hand here on turn 1. I'm a big fan of saying there's no such thing as a universal rule. There's no statement that's just true 100% of the time. But don't ever play Concoctor on turn 1. If you play Concoctor on turn 1, then your Gnolls are going to cost 3, and you're really not going to be able to reduce them without the Hazy Concoction. And that's not what we want. We want those Gnolls nice and cheap, 1 if not 0. So turn 1, we just trade the Cutlass here, and fortunately we were able to draw a spell and discount it. And we're going to take another trade. And it's important to keep in mind now with this concoctor, because of the 2 trades plus the 2 draws that we've had this game, playing concoctor is actually going to set our null to 0. So it's perfectly acceptable to go ahead and get this concoctor down while we have the mana to be able to do it. Other option would be to hero power there, but I want to go ahead and get a potion in hand, especially with the Ghoulist Alchemist in hand. I know that I'll be able to get that Alchemist down and play this potion for free, which could potentially be pretty strong. And we see we're actually against Jackpot Rogue here, so this is a matchup I believe that we can actually just build a very wide board. They could be small minions, and pressure our opponent's health total. At that point, we would be able to just put our opponent totally dependent on what they're creating from Jackpot and what they're creating from Reconnaissance. So we all know that rogues can high roll. That's definitely a possibility, but on average, they're probably not going to hit those big removals that they would need for these nice wide boards. So you can see here, turn 3, I just went ahead and got down the location. And then on turn 4, I'm going to want to look to go in as wide as possible. Ghoulish Alchemist, the potion that we got is a random 3-drop. And we also have some cheaper draw spells here, so we should be able to develop a pretty decent size stealth minion here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start off with the Ghoulish Alchemist, make sure that I activate the combo to be able to draw these cards. And Gone Fishing to take a look at the bottom of the deck seems good. And I'm going to take the Null because it's going to be free. But it's important to keep in mind, especially with this game, the other Sinstone Graveyard is actually on the bottom of the deck, and we're likely not going to have access to it. And we're just going to continue to play our cheap and or free cards here, so we get down the Null, summon a random minion, and then we're going to go ahead and click on the Graveyard here. Make sure we get our 1 damage face. The 2/3 Murloc, actually a bit of a low roll. Would have liked to have seen something a little bit bigger, at least from the attack on this minion. But it is what it is, and again, that's exactly why, you know, random 3-drops, random cards are all inferior to the draw 2 potion that I was talking about earlier. So it's scary to see the Trickster. Opponent plays Celestial Alignment. That's definitely an interesting choice. You don't see that a whole lot from Jackpot Rogue. We pick up second Alchemist here, so I think I just want to go ahead and get down the Putricide. We don't have any way to be able to draw cards in hand. Potentially, I can create some random potions. I'd really like to be able to refill my hand here with some additional resources to make sure that we can close this game out. And I'm going to take a trade with the 1/2. I don't think the 1 face damage is actually all that important here. And this will allow us to be able to generate 1 additional potion. And then we're going to trade with the 2/3. Again, this line of play just gives me 2 potions, and you can see we got summon a random 3-drop and destroy a random enemy minion. And we're going to shove our damage base here. So it's always important to keep in mind what potion you have in your hand and what it does. It can be a lot to keep up with if you end up with 2, 3, sometimes 4 potions in hand. But you always want to make sure you know the tools that you have access to. So looks like our opponent is getting down Scabs here, and now the Celestial Alignment play makes a lot of sense. With the Scabs hero power, they're guaranteed to be able to play at least 2 cards every turn. Keeping in mind that they're also going to have ways to cheat out mana in the form of Preparation, as well as Shadow Step. And a pretty good random minion here from our opponent as well. It's going to be a lot of healing, it's going to be damage, and it's also a taunt to prevent us from going face. So I'm going to get the Putricide back down, and we're just going to take destroy a random minion here. It's going to give us a potion in hand, and we hit the big boy taunts. We get another random destruction potion. And I think I'm just going to get the Null down here. We're going to get this taunt out of the way. And we're really just, this turn, working towards trying to get another big stealth minion on the board, as big as we possibly can. Deal 3 and destroy a minion actually looks pretty good. So we're going to get the Ghoulish Alchemist back down again, just trying to have a lot of minions on the board, nice and wide. We're going to deal damage. We're going to remove something from our opponent's side of the board, create an additional concoction, and we can actually play Maestra and the Scribbling Stenographer here. I'm going to play Maestra first. Stenographer goes to 0, but I need to make sure that I actually click the location first here, otherwise we don't have room on the board to be able to fit in this stealth minion. So we're back in business with another stealth 7/7, and again, we're nice and wide. We've got plenty of power on the board, and actually potentially threatening lethal. 22 attack on the board, our opponent's at 24. That would be a Cutlass or a potion away from lethal if everything sticks, which likely we don't expect it to, but we force our opponent to react. Need for Greed from our opponent. Again, that's not really all that bad. Card draw is good. Card draw is good for them. And keeping in mind now, we also need to track what cards are going to be replayed by Contraband Stash and Tess Greymane. We also see a Null come down. They're just removing minions from our side of the board, trying to reduce the amount of damage that we're going to be able to do to him. And next turn, it might actually just be an Edwin turn. We could potentially develop a big Edwin. Drawing cards with 3 mana left to play. We do still have 2 preparations in the deck. We have 2 Shadow Steps. We still have the 2 Serrated Bone Spikes. And so we have ways to be able to cheat mana and to be able to get a bigger Edwin and draw quite a few cards. And we can see here our opponent actually just removing a significant amount of the damage on our board. And the Contraband Stash comes down, so this is good for our opponent. They were low on cards. They've refilled their hand now. Good news for us, they do reset their mana back to 1. And the Estelor not active because they don't have 4 mana. And again, we see that big 3/8 lifesteal taunt in the way, so we're going to get the Edwin down, see what we can find. And prep is good. We play that immediately. We'll go ahead and equip the weapon. We're just trying to draw cards. We want to get a big Edwin. Shadow Step can actually go on the Stenographer here, so I'm going to bump into the 3/8. Not super concerned about the healing that it's going to give. I just need to get this minion out of the way. Lets me play the Shadow Step. I'm going to be able to replay this for free. And we're going to go ahead and play the prep here as well. Just trying to get the bigger Edwin. Go ahead and get the Potion Belt. Stenographer is going to be coming back down. Love to see the draw too. We just want more cards in our hand. Actually going to take the deal 3 damage here. And deal 3 again. So the reason why I chose not to go with the draw 2 there is because I want to get this deal 3 damage in my hand to be able to set up lethal. This Edwin is getting really big, and it's possible I might be able to have lethal with burn from hand. So just continuing to play cards here. And I'm going to swing into the remaining 3/1. And I'm going to take a value trade on that 4/1 and push the 7/4 face here. So just working as hard as I can to try to set up lethal. I kind of changed my mind about the cards that I wanted. I really think that deal 3 damage from these 2 cards is going to be potentially good in this matchup. Just trying to set up lethal. Being able to have that burn from hands can be good while I have that option. And at this point in the game, I do have a decent amount of cards in hand. I've got the board, but I'm looking for ways to close out the game. And that's just not going to be in my deck at this point if I need damage from hand, because this version of the deck is not running any burn whatsoever. So we can see here our opponents just continuing to try to remove our board. They want to make sure that we're actually not able to kill them next turn. The question is whether or not they're going to be able to remove the big 18/18 Edwin. It's just so much damage if we get to attack with it. And, you know, starting to get really close to setting up lethal. As it stands now, if the 18/18 hits face, we're going to be able to play the 2 deal 3 concoctions, as well as equip the Blackwater Cutlass. Or actually, we already have one equipped. And be able to kill our opponent from there. So our opponent maybe doesn't know it, but they're actually going to have to dodge lethal this turn. And we see the Scab's Hero Power. Don't really know if the Edwin survives this turn. Okay, so Contraband Stash. They're drawing cards, Celestial Alignment, and they're going to get that big taunt back in the way, I believe. I don't think they've played more than 5 other cards. Yep. So once again, we're having to deal with this big healing and taunt. So deal 3 and a random card. We have deal 3, draw 2. We're going to start with the Potion Belt here. I really want to be able to remove that big 3/8. I need this 18/18 to go face. Destroy random enemy minion is the pick here, and we're actually going to take it again. So again, this is totally situational. You don't do that every time. But now with the Bone Spike, and we're going to have second Bone Spike from the Shadow of Demise here, we're going to be able to remove 2 minions, and then we're going to be able to play this concoction to destroy 2 random enemy minions. That's going to allow us to be able to get rid of that big boy 3/8. Of course, with the Reborn, he's going to come back, but I'm going to actually swing in and take that damage with my face. Opponent does get 3 healing here, but can't be helped. This is going to be the line of play. And we're just going to go ahead and actually... We're going to punch with the Edwin for sure. Make sure we don't miss our attack. I'm just going to deal damage and draw cards here. We're going to spend the mana. There's an argument here that you play the Cold Light Seer just to get the 2/3 minion on the board, but I want to spend my mana doing as much damage as possible because I'm really trying to set up lethal here. And by drawing 2, we potentially move our way closer to Astalor. We have a Shadow Step in hand. This may be a game where we would have to Astalor Shadow Step to be able to get multiple of the 8 mana versions of Astalor to be able to close out the game here. And again, just not sure that this Edwin survives, especially with the Potion Belt being played by our opponents. If the Edwin dies, likely we just get down the 7 mana 7/7 stealth to try to set up lethal for the following turn. And our opponent actually not able to remove the big boy Edwin. So we don't want to keep any of these cards. I would likely keep the Ghoulish Alchemist here if I had the Potion Belt in hand, but because we don't have Potion Belt, we're not keeping the Alchemist. It's probably the only way that I would ever keep that. Nice to see Sinstone Graveyard. That's one of our preferred cards. And looks like we're actually going to be up against an actual hunter. With Renathal, I'm assuming that this is actually going to be a Beast Hunter. You hate to see that Peasant come down on turn 1. I could equip the Cutlass here, but there's just no way that I'm doing that simply because it makes our Gnolls too expensive. If we equip the Cutlass, Gnolls are going to be 4 mana, and we're going to need those Gnolls to be really cheap to be able to fight for the board here. So definitely going to take the chance. They could have buffed the Peasant. If they do, 1 buff isn't that bad if they had the Dog Biscuit, but they don't. Could remove the Peasant with a Ghostly Strike, but again, I think I'm just going to bide my time here. They didn't have the buff last turn. Possible they top deck it, but again, I'm just trying to get my Gnolls as cheap as possible here. Also with the Graveyard in hand, I could potentially set up a nice little Graveyard turn. A big Graveyard minion can actually win this matchup just because we know that the big Beast Hunter doesn't really have single target removal for very big minions. So because we have Mana Cheat in our hands with Prep Bone Spike, we have the Coin, we have the Graveyard, and then we have other cheap spells, we're just going to go in on turn 3 for a big Sinstone Graveyard minion, I think, here. We'll also be able to remove quite a bit of our opponent's side of the board here. At least 2 of these minions are going to die. So that's going to be good. We'll make sure we get rid of the Peasant, shut down their card draw. So, we're just going to get out the Coin, and then I believe we want to prep Bone Spike, followed by the Sinstone Graveyard here. And I'm going to kill the 2/2 just because I know the Ghostly Strike is going to be able to remove the 2/1 Peasant. And then we get down the Graveyard here. And we can actually, I think we can actually fish here to see what we get off the bottom of our deck. It's going to give us an option of 3 cards to be able to decide what we draw next. Kind of debating on whether or not I want to play the Putricide, though. Again, we're kind of low on resources in hand, and being able to generate the random potions could be good. Serrated Bone Spike, I guess, just lets us be able to do more things. It could be a little bit of a mispick there, though. With this board state, I might have been better off taking the other Ghostly Strike. I'm going to go ahead and get the Putricide down. We're going to make sure we remove the Peasant. And we actually hit a Gnoll here, so we play the Gnoll. We're going to remove the 3/1. And I'm just going to play the Door of Shadows. It gives us just a little bit bigger minion off of the Graveyard. And we hit a Potion Belt here. And draw 2, destroy a random enemy minion. It's going to be important that we keep track of the potions in hand. With Putricide on board, we could potentially be creating a lot of different potions that are going to be in our hand. We need to make sure what effects we have access to so that we can make the appropriate turns. If you end up with 2 minion in your hand and you're not keeping up with it, you could potentially waste time in your turn reading the cards that are in your hand, and that's something that you can do when it's your opponent's turn. Make sure that we're playing efficient. So we get another random destruction here. Our opponent Dredging could potentially hit a Beast, which would be very cheap, but unlikely just because of the amount of Beasts that are being run in this 40-card deck. And we're going to start with Potion Belt here. And unfortunately, no draw. I think I'm going to take the Slimy just because being able to stay wide is good. And then here, definitely the draw 2. We do kind of need to be able to refill our hand a little bit. So you can see now we have 3 concoctions in hand. We need to make sure that we know what all of them do so that we can plot out the best play on our next turn. And we shove the 12 damage face. So the 9/9 is going to cause a lot of problems for the Beast Hunter in this matchup. And this would be a similar line. If this were a Shock Spitter Hunter, we'd be taking the exact same lines of play. Wide boards are good, big minions are good. We just want to play the cards that our deck gives us. And so, let's see, draw 2, destroy a minion. I can actually swing into the 2/4, that lets me set up the Bone Spike. We'll get a little bit of mana cheat here. And I think I'm just going to take card draw and remove the 4/5. And we can just Potion Belt here. This gives us another concoction in hand. Yeah, we're going to take the cheap stuff because we have a graveyard on board as well as one in hand. And additional card draw, this is going to be good. Simply because we have 2 graveyards, but I think I'm actually going to go ahead and use the graveyard that's on the board here. It's only a 4/4, but it potentially is going to allow us to be able to set up some type of lethal. At this point in the game, that smaller minion, it's better to just go ahead and get it on the board, in my opinion, with the state of what's going on here. Check out our concoctions, make sure we know what they do. And we also have the additional Sinstone Graveyard if we need a minion. We have the Tavish coming down. I would assume that they're likely going to want to take Motion Denied. Potentially we could be taking 9 damage, but we don't expect a lot of burst out of our opponent, so we might be actually okay with just taking 9 damage off of that. And the trade, that was absolutely expected. We knew the Null wasn't going to survive with the 3/1 rush. And I think I want to check for Freezing Trap first. Definitely don't want to lose our 9/9. That damage needs to go face. It is Freezing Trap. And so at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to drop this Concoctor. Draw 2 and destroy. That doesn't do anything this turn. And it's actually improved Ice Trap here, so no Motion Denied from our opponent. They were playing very, very defensive. Motion Denied really, I guess, more of an offensive play. And I think we can actually just go ahead and get down the graveyard here and start to set up for a graveyard minion. And again, just a small graveyard minion is going to go a long way here, so I'm actually going to play that this turn. We're going to go ahead and generate additional resources. Our hand is absolutely full of potions now. Our hand looks like the Potion Belt artwork. And we're going to go ahead and take the 4/4 stealth again. We're just so close to being able to kill our opponent. It's hard for them to deal with the 9/9 if the 9/9 dies. Potentially we just kill them with the concoction that destroys a random enemy minion. If our 4-attack minion is able to go face, plus the hero power, that's going to give us the 5 damage we need. And we should be able to find a way to have lethal here. We still have 1 Null, 1 Stenographer in deck. And we have a couple of destroy random enemy minions here, so I think I want to trade the 4/4 into the 2/4, and then we can draw 2 and destroy a random enemy minion. And if we hit some of our additional damage or cards that have rush, then we can actually just end the game on the spot here. And we don't. Still think there's a lethal here somewhere. It's just a matter of finding it. I need to draw additional cards. If I hit a Stenographer, Shadow Step, Stenographer is actually going to let me kill my opponent. So we're going to go ahead and get down the Ghoulish Alchemist plus the Concoction. And we hit a Null here, so that's actually going to be enough. We also hit a random spell, but important to note here that this random spell didn't actually win us the game. We had Null, and then Shadow Step the Null. We're going for a bonus game here. We've got Warlock, and we actually have a Potion Belt in our opening hand, so that's good. Anytime you have Potion Belt in the opening hand, it means your Nulls are going to be free. Oh, and we hit the Null. We are going to high roll our opponent so hard. I'm going to show you what this deck can do when you hit the good draw. We got a second Cutlass as well for an additional trade. Oh, we hit the prep. Please forgive me for what I'm about to do to this Warlock. So it looks like it is going to be Imp Warlock, likely running Curses. I don't see too many pure Imp Warlocks anymore. I think they're all running the Curse package now. And Potion Belt is definitely just the play here, and card draw is definitely what we want. And likely just Hazy Concoction. We have the Sinstone Graveyard in hand as well, so it's going to give us something cheap. It could be playable. We're going to try to make that big Sinstone Graveyard minion. And we're just going to go ahead and take a trade here. So I did it in this order because I wanted the Cutlass to potentially be able to discount the Concoction, which it does. It's going to save us a mana next turn, versus if it discounted Potion Belt this turn, that would be not good, because we don't have a good way to be able to spend that one last mana. So we're actually just going in here. So we've got Graveyard, and then we'll go... I like to coin first in these situations as far as order goes, just because I want to make sure that the prep doesn't discount the coin if I misplay the order. And then we're just going to add stuff to our hand. And we're just going to keep going here. Go ahead and get down the Concoctor. I mean, it's a body that's on the board. Again, we can overwhelm our opponent just with a wide board in this matchup. Imp Curse Warlock can't really clear the board until turn 6. And we'll just take the Potion Belt, get the Stenographer down, trade into the 3/4. Then we got the nice big 8/8 minion here. So I feel like we've already won this game just because our opponent can't address the board, and they agree. I'm Uncorrupt. Thank you for watching.